Good evening, everybody. We're about to start. Welcome to today's online cultural Majlis. Just checking once again. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up if yes. Great, thank you. So it gives me great pleasure to announce our speaker for today, or present our speaker for today. In fact, our speaker for today has a gargantuan task because we have tried to really include these two major subjects in 1 hour. And I think that if any of you know the Middle East, you will know that each of these two subjects deserves at least an hour, if not hours, in order to be covered. But I don't think I can think of anyone better than our guest tonight, who, by the way, has just broken her fast. So I really appreciate her being here tonight with us so soon after she had her meal. And I will tell you how the hour will progress. In the first 20 minutes, Dr. Adila is going to speak about the Palestinian Museum, an issue that is, I think, relevant not only to us here in the Middle East and the Arab world, but throughout the world as an important site of representation of a people who deserve much recognition. And in the second 20 minutes, Dr. Adila will attempt to speak about her in-depth research on modernist, Turkish-born modernist Fahrelnissa Zeid, that she has researched and published a book about. And I will take your questions on the side, and we will try to give at least 25 minutes at least to your questions. So make sure that you add your affiliation and your full name so I can direct the question to Dr. Adila. I'll introduce her very fast because time is of the essence. Dr. Adila Laidi Hanieh is a writer and academic and the Director General of the Palestinian Museum since 2018. Dr. Adila received her PhD in Cultural Studies from George Mason University as a Fulbright Scholar and obtained an MA in the Arab Studies program from Georgetown University. She also did a postdoctoral fellowship from the Arab Council for Social Sciences and taught at Zeid University in Palestine. She's published several books and essays, including one on the artist of tonight's subject, Fahrelnissa Zeid, titled Painter of Inner Worlds. And also she is the founding director of the Khalil Sakakini Cultural Center in Palestine, where she curated to much acclaim an exhibition titled 100 Shaheed, 100 Lives. Dr. Adila, I will be going through the slides, but I think you may start whenever you like. Thank you so much for doing this tonight.
أولاً شكراً كثير Sultan. I know we have to speak in English. Thank you so much, Sultan, for inviting me to the new Middle East public square that you have created. And thank you for giving culture, a larger presence and also a larger value and a larger spotlight. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you. And marhaba to everybody. Ramadan Mubarak. Belated Happy Easter. Thank you. So, yes.
You have 20 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can start. Type. So we will start by speaking about the Palestinian Museum, which opened 4 years ago. And it opened in Palestine, in Zeid, in a small village town, becoming a town, university town, called Zeid. So you can see the building here. You see it's flat, elongated, horizontal. It was designed by an Irish firm called Hanieh, who had the distinction and the great honor of winning for their work the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, and that's the square that you see on top. So we're very proud of that win. And the building is not only an architectural gem, but it is also LEED certified. This is a certificate issued by the Council for Green Buildings in the US, and we're the only building in Palestine to have received it, and the only museum in the Middle East. It's a shame that this is an old picture, but the garden is full of plants and flowers. It's blooming. We have plants and flowers that are native to all of Palestine. So hopefully many of you will be able to visit us soon. Next slide, sorry. Okay, so I can talk later in the questions about what is the museum and what is the museum about and its vision, but I'd rather just describe the picture. So this slide is about the museum being a transnational museum above all. So for example, the very first exhibition that opened at the museum did not open at the museum. It opened in Lebanon, in Dar al-Nimr in 2016, which was called At the Seams, an absolutely beautiful exhibition curated by guest curator Rachel Dedman. We are also a transnational museum because of all our digital programming. So for example, you can visit now on our website. You can get a 360 tour of the first exhibition we had at the museum, the Jerusalem Lives exhibition. And if you wear your goggles, if you have cardboard goggles at home, you can also see it with 3D. And speaking of 3D, we developed a virtual reality version of our Palestinian embroidery exhibition, and the marvelous picture that you see here at the bottom is a lady who lives in Mukhayyam al-Jalil in Lebanon, Palestinian lady, who is guided by a young volunteer from a library there, and she is experiencing the VR of the Palestinian embroidery exhibition. So this is just a small sample, but we will get more. هلا. طيب. So we have the museum where we do all of the work, but we also have two major digital platforms, two independent websites, which I invite all of you to visit, and I can explain why. But let's begin with the first one. The first one is called PAL Journeys, and this is what you see on the website, PAL Journeys, رحلات فلسطينية بالعربي. This is a project in cooperation with IPS, Institute for Palestine Studies, and the initial design was elegantly produced by Visualizing Palestine. So we salute our partners. This is basically an enormous source of information, which is accurate and in-depth information in Arabic and in English about the history of Palestine from, let's say, 4 centuries, with basically scholarly type of documentation. So you have original documents, you have original photographs, there are thousands of photographs, you have chronologies, articles. So it's basically everything you ever wanted to know about Palestine, but were afraid to ask, is on paljourneys.org. بعدين, the second website we have, that's a wonderful project that we're very privileged to have been working on for 2 years, and hopefully, no, actually for 3 years, and hopefully it will continue forever, basically. This is called the Digital Archive. So whereas in the first one, in paljourneys.org, we had the scholarly look at the history of Palestine, heavily documented by documents and dates and facts and history, this is history from below, palarchive.org. Palarchive.org, we just launched last year. So on the right, you have the website, and on the left, we printed out some images and we blew them up and we put them in our hallway at the entrance of the museum in Bir Zeid. So why is it history from below? Because we have a team of researchers who identify and who collect collections from anyone, like anybody who may be watching me now, who has family photos, maybe some trade union documents, maybe some municipalities minutes, maybe some private letters of somebody who was significant in one way or the other. Basically, it's to document the resistance and the achievements of the Palestinian people from the 19th century until now through private, normal, everyday, quotidian collections. It's a treasure trove, and everybody's invited not only to participate, to look, but also if you see like missing information, this is, this is participatory, it's open source. You can write us and we will add the information. So that's, the first one was PAL Journeys, the second one was PAL Archive, and they're both growing and growing and growing, and we have surprises in store, and they're accessible in Arabic and in English. This, I want to speak briefly about our collection, at least what I can show of our collection. So we start by the garden, the beautiful garden I showed you at the start. So for example, so we have a few artworks that are permanently installed. For example, we start with the work by Saudi artist Sultan bin Fahd at the top. And next to it, we have a work by the Palestinian artist Khalil Rabah. Actually, there was another one, 67% and 48%, but I only showed this. So these are permanently installed in the garden. They were part of our first exhibition that I will discuss later. Here we are very proud to have revived this building, this vernacular building craft, which you see on the top right, I think, of your screen, which is what we call a mentar, or a watchtower, which is a sort of structures that farmers used to build on their lands far away from the cities to go during harvest time. So there was no transportation to go and sleep back home. So they would sleep on site and keep the harvest and the animals in the bottom. And actually many of them appear in the paintings of Slimane. So why, of Slimane Mansour, the great artist Slimane Mansour. So why is this here? Because in our last exhibition that just closed last year, we asked Slimane to contribute a work to the garden, you know, so we thought he was going to create some work, you know, like the ones you see on the left. So he said, no, my work is that I want a mentar to be revived. And we had to look very hard to find a person who could actually build it. Anyway, so that's part of our collection, the bottom, the top half. But then we have at the bottom half, we have on the right, part of our remarkable collection of Palestinian political posters donated by Ambassador Ali Qazaq. And then on the left, we have the linkage between the digital programming I mentioned and the collection. This is my colleague, Bara, who is working in our lab. We're very proud of this lab. It's a conservation lab. And this is a project in cooperation with the British Library, and it's funded by the British Council. And we conserved and repaired 3,000 documents last year, and we will be repairing more this year, and we will be actually opening it to the public so that they can bring their old documents. And you know how much, you know, paper documents are very important in Palestinian history, to repair and to also preserve. So that's part of our working collections. But I want to mention that we do have other collections that are in the diaspora that we're trying to bring, and I'd rather not discuss them now. So here we see, for example, one space of the museum, which is what we call the glass gallery. This is an outside, this is like a corridor that goes all along our main exhibition space. And we will be developing the space to use it as an exhibition, as a permanent exhibition space. But now, right before we had to close down because of the COVID, we exhibited part of our posters collection in a brilliant presentation curated by my colleague Adel Jarrar. Oh, and actually, sorry, some of you may already know about this exhibition, because as soon as we had the closure with the confinement, we released online a video version of it. We have 3 versions. We have an English subtitled one, a French subtitled one, and a Spanish subtitled one. So many of you may have seen it. Now we come to our exhibitions here, our past exhibitions actually. So the first exhibition actually we had, like I said, was the Jerusalem exhibition, Jerusalem Lives. Tahiyya al-Quds, okay, which was guest curated by Reem Fadda, and you can see at the bottom of it. And this was a political view at Jerusalem now as a laboratory, failed laboratory for globalization. There were artworks, but there were also many documentary and archaeological material. On top, we have the continuation or the second version of the embroidery exhibition I mentioned to you. This time it was curated, it was shown in Ramallah, in Bir Zeid, but we expanded it and we changed the title. And again, same curator, guest curator, Rachel Dedman. And this, I think it's very important to understand that we invested a lot in this exhibition, not only to bring it about, but also to do the, the virtual reality that I mentioned, because this is a completely different look at costume. We're not looking at costume through heritage or fashion. We're looking at it through a materialist social history approach. بس نرجع شوي لورا لأنه في صورة ما حكيتش عنها هاي. So then we have the last exhibition we had, guest curated by Dr. Tina Sherwell. This was our first all art exhibition. and probably the last for a while. So this was called Intimate Terrains, and it was a look at representations of landscape in Palestinian art, and it's the largest exhibition of Palestinian art ever held. We had 36 artists from different generations. Some of the work that we are very proud to do at the museum, I mean, if we do nothing, this is like the most beautiful thing we do, is our education program. So every program we do, whether it's the websites or the collection or the environmental awareness work or the exhibitions, everything has an educational component. Some of it takes place in Bir Zeid, some of it takes place outside of Bir Zeid. We have a partnership with the Ministry of Education, and we bring in 100 schools, governmental schools, UNRWA, UN refugee schools. We also produce all these magnificent publications, kids' trails, teacher training guide, coloring books for children. It's just an amazing program, and I have to say that all this is designed and conceptualized in-house by my colleague, Hanieh Rashid, and my other colleague, Sarah Zahran, whom I salute. And it's all done, conceptualized, designed, created in-house. And we're very proud of that. Okay, this is a new program that I'm very proud to have launched last year as part of the development of a new program strategy for the museum. Actually, it was the first 5-year program strategy of the museum, and it was the introduction of a knowledge and research component with a new research and knowledge department. So that means that the museum not only produces activities, actually the mission of the museum is to produce and disseminate learning experiences about Palestine, emancipatory learning experiences. That means also knowledge production and knowledge dissemination. So here in the top half of the image, we have the open call for papers, which is still open, CFP. This is the largest ever call for papers and grants that are given on the subject of Palestinian culture. So we are talking about call for papers, publications, conference, and in it, there is a marvelous project, which is a 2-year-long project of mapping knowledge gaps in Palestinian art history. So this is all, and this is generously supported by Omar and Ghalia Qattan. And so this is the call for papers, which are still open until mid-May. So I urge any researcher and academic who dreamt of doing some research on Palestinian culture, this is your chance. At the bottom, we have some of our events that, you know, we have talks and symposia, and it's all original. We try always, as much as we can, to commission original research, except for the picture at the bottom. Of course, this is Dr. Layla Abu Lughod giving a lecture. At the left was our first symposium, our first, hopefully, annual symposium that we organized on the theme of landscape.
Doctora, maybe I'll just ask you a quick question here. The call for papers, is it only open for scholars, or can anyone with an in-depth interest in Palestine contribute?
يعني شوف إحنا we are asking also for primary material and primary research and archival research and even testimonies, because we're sorry, and I'm talking about the history of art call. For the rest, no, it should be scholarly because we have open calls for artists, but if it's primary information, primary material, yes, it would fit in under this rubric. Yes.
Thank you. And this one, this gentleman at the bottom right here is Omar Qattan, who's the chairman of the museum, I think.
Former chief. I think he's the founding chairman of the museum board, and we are very grateful to him. So this is, of course, the regular work that we do, which is what we call the public program. So we have open days, we have agricultural events, we have concerts down, at the bottom, as you can see in our amphitheater. We have an open air amphitheater. We do a lot of workshops for designers, for artists. For example, here you see artist Amir Shomali giving a workshop on designing political posters, conceptualizing rather. We have an astronomy event. I mean, the museum is a place for all segments of society and all age groups. So anybody can find something they want, or something they can appreciate, or that can entertain them, or that they can learn in the museum. Okay, so this is the campaign that we launched right before COVID, or right before the confinement. You know, every museum in the world launched the same hashtag, museum from home, okay? So we translated it in Arabic to متحفك في بيتك. But we also added something else. We do have a Palestinian specificity. We're not like any museum in the world. So this is why we called the campaign Palestine Perseveres. في الظروف الاستثنائية فلسطين مستمرة. So we were very lucky because the museum was conceived as a transnational museum. Everything that we did physically was already online on our YouTube channel or on our social media. Plus, 2 of our major programs are already online, the PAL Archives and the PAL Journeys and the 360 Tour. Basically, we were able to turn on a dime very quickly and to redesign this, our content for a stay-at-home audience. But the nice thing that we did is that we added competitions, activities to do at home, and also we developed instructional videos for activities that people can do at home, as if their home was a museum. Hence, we reversed the thing. And I'm very happy to say that this has increased dramatically our, our followers on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, dramatically increased. And I'm very, very happy and proud to say that ICOM, the International Council of Museums, mentioned our campaign and mentioned our work today in an article they published about museums and COVID. So I hope you can join us too and follow our hashtags and participate in our campaign. So this is our staff, our wonderful staff, my colleagues, and in the back of the building. Actually, I was telling you about the garden being, completely fully flowering and so on, except in this area. This is the area where we have a work by Bob Gramsma on the right, and he actually, it's called Facts on the Ground. You know what Facts on the Ground means in the Palestinian context. So he excavated the bottom of this cement tongue to show the fragility of the facts on the ground. And so we had to leave everything naked outside it. But the rest are all, regular stone from the building.
Victoria, before we proceed with the Fahrelnissa's presentation, which is going to be all too short, at least for my sake, maybe I'll ask you a couple of questions. The first question is, do you accept donations by Palestinians and maybe even non-Palestinians? I am not talking about financial donations, but maybe items, clothes, even historical documents, photographs. If someone finds an album of their grandparents' photographs, should they throw them away or should they give them to the museum? And why?
No, they should contact the museum. First, this is why we did these videos, to train people how to archive material that they have at home. Definitely, we need donations of items of Palestinian material culture, and we welcome people to get in touch with them. We have top staff who have received the best training, the best museums in the world, and who have years of experience behind them in renovating and in restoring paper documents and clothes and so on. So that's not an issue. This is what the museum is for. It's to receive these donations of items.
Do we have any idea of numbers of visitors, or do you count children, workshops? Is there any sort of key performance indicators, as some Western consultants call them?
No, it's not Western consultants. Let me let you in on a secret. Everybody at the Palestinian Museum has their own KPI, from the director to the managers to the officers to the coordinators. Everybody has a KPI and everybody follows them religiously. Anyway, let's close that parenthesis. So let me tell you that last year we had about 25,000 visitors, not only in Palestine, on the building, but also at events that we held outside, whether it was in Beirut or in Jordan or in Haifa, so yeah. And we hope to have more, but I think it's a pretty good number. you know.
Okay, so before we move on to Fahrelnissa segment, Louisa Macmillan says, beautiful background behind you, Dr. Adila. What is that artwork behind you?
No, it's not an artwork. It's a it's a Mexican fabric. It's called otomi. No. Yes, thank you. I thought you were going to ask me about the museum.
I will. So what I want to do is, with your
Actually,
approval.
before we move on,
Yeah.
I don't know if I should say something about PAL journeys.
Sure. Tell us anything
I
you'd like
know,
to share.
the world has, this museum has been in gestation since 1997. It was the brainchild of Dr. Ibrahim Abu Lughod, who was dear friends with Edward Said. It was supposed to okay, let's say 1997, Palestine and the world were in a very specific place with very specific expectations. And today in 2020, the world is a very different place. However, the Palestinian cause and the Palestinian question is the same. Its justification is the same. And I think people have a lot to learn from what Palestinians have managed to achieve despite all of the odds. I think it's a marvelous question of survival and steadfastness for a people that has managed to survive without resources, only with the strength of hard work and education and belief in their cause. So I think if people are afraid of labels, Palestinian, PAL Journeys, PAL Archive, what's that, Palestinian Museum, this is how we should look at it, and this is what the museum is about. Providing all these narratives of steadfastness and of humanity.
Doctora, I actually have a question from a former student of mine at Yale University. Selma Shaheen from Palestine says, thank you for an amazing talk, Doctora. I have been to the museum and it is incredible there. I had a quick question. Do you have initiatives, or are you planning on starting new ones to keep Palestinian students involved and connected to their culture?
We actually, thank you, in the strategy that I mentioned I developed last year, the new 5-year strategy of the museum, we do exactly have such an initiative, which I don't want to go into details, but I think you and I understand each other. And hopefully you, meaning Selma, and I understand each other. And I hope that we will be able to bring it about, because now, we have to get out of, as we say in Arabic, from the neck of the bottle, from the bottleneck. There you go, in English. With the corona, we don't know what the financial consequences are going to be, but we are steadfast in our belief that we can implement our strategy and our plan. So you should hook up with us, Selma, and maybe we can implement our plan next year or the year after.
Right, Adila, let's take a couple of more questions and then we can move on. One question from Farah. Farah says, are there any restrictions presented to the museum and its projects by governmental cultural policies? Do you have any restrictions that you operate under?
Well, we're under occupation.
Okay.
I should say something about the museum. The museum is a non-governmental organization. The museum is the flagship project of the Welfare Foundation, مؤسسة التعاون, which many of you may be familiar with. It's the largest Palestinian charitable philanthropic development organization, which was established in 1983 by a number of Palestinian philanthropists and academics, among them Edward Said. And the organization has developed and morphed and evolved over the years, and their flagship project, as I said, is the museum. So we are registered, of course, as an NGO, but that is our affiliation. We also are very happy and pleased to border the University of Zeid that you can see on the right of the picture. And we actually, our land is their land, is leased land from the University of Zeid. And we love to have them as neighbors because their students are all the time on our terrace, in our cafeteria, in our museum, in our shop. And practically all of our staff are graduates or students from Zeid, and we cooperate a lot with their academic centers, with their students, with their professors.
Doctora, I have such great questions from a student called Juman Al-Qawasmi, Watan Studio. She studies at Northwestern. She says that she loves the way that the museum sees itself as a mothership. She asked several questions, but the one I will maybe present to you now is, what are the next steps for the museum, especially in light of COVID? And do you have a second part of a building going forward?
Yes, we do have a second part of a building going forward, but I would say, like any good museum director with their salt, our goal is to close our budget deficit and to be able, to run the ship soundly. But anyway, but the point is that we are continuing to work. We are continuing with our plans, even during the 5-week confinement that we had. Everybody worked very hard from home, thanks to the miracles of technology. Basically, what we did is that our programs are the same. They just have been postponed. We are waiting to see what will happen with our partners at the schools and the Ministry of Education to see how we can transform our education program. But it's all systems go as far as we're concerned, and our programs and strategy are going ahead as planned, except that the calendar will be shifting. So it means more exhibitions, more online platforms, more archiving of Palestinian history, more production of knowledge and exciting publications and encounters. So yeah, we're moving forward.
I want to ask you a couple of more questions, but if you keep your answers very, very brief. So under 20, 30 seconds, is that okay?
Okay.
So Maura James from Harvard says, she's thanking you for your presentation. She says, do you have any plans to partner with other museums, whether they were Palestinian or non-Palestinians, abroad?
Yes, of course. I mean, that's what we want to do. That's our DNA. We have all our exhibitions are are ready to travel. We have touring documents, we have touring specifications. I was very happy to be in Japan in September to participate at the ICOM conference in Kyoto, and I spent my days basically having meetings with museum directors and to tell them about how they can welcome our exciting and beautiful exhibitions. So yes, we do want to do that very much, and we are actually working with some museums on bringing that about. But the work of museums is very long. The planning period is long. So when we say that we're planning a traveling exhibition, it doesn't happen in 6 months. It happens in a year and a half. So,
Doctora, I think there's a slight objection.
Sorry, that was long.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But this will be the last question about the Palestinian Museum. I will then share with you
For now.
Yes. Until we come back to it later in the next half hour. There's a comment here, I think, from Yara Masri, who says, I noticed in PAL Journeys that a painting by Antoine Jean Gros, Napoleon in Jaffa, is used. Can we have another choice of that era of a representative painting, particularly as it was commissioned as French nationalist propaganda in the Orient?
Yes, but if we put that document, it's for a purpose, because we are putting the document, that painting, as a document of colonial domination or conquest, and we are providing the Palestinian perspective on it. So this is why the document is there. Okay. The document is not there to illustrate the Palestinian narrative. It's the Palestinian narrative is in a way illustrating the hidden narrative provided by that painting, or eclipsed by that painting.
Doctora, now we will be moving to the second half of this presentation. I apologize that you are rushed, and I really thank you for being so patient with us. يعطيك العافية. Please take this chance and have a sip of water, because I feel like you have given us so much knowledge. I think few people I know, or few people are able to give us such an in-depth account of the upcoming artist. We're lucky to have one of her students here as well amongst our attendees tonight. But the artist that Dr. Adila will be speaking about is a Turkish-born artist that we like to claim also in the Arab world. Yes, she was Turkish, but I think she also spent so many years in two Arab countries, Iraq and Jordan. And there's so much to say. I cannot emphasize that. Dr. Adila once attempted to give a talk in 1 hour, and the talk lasted for an hour and a half. And apparently they had to shut down the lights and ask people to leave because it was so interesting, but it kept going on. And I think that is just an example of how much knowledge she has, but also how important this topic is. And so, Doctora, I don't know how you will do it, but you will be telling us in the next 10 minutes or so. I know I said 17 minutes, but I just cut them down by a few minutes. In the next 10 minutes or so, tell us about your personal journey with this book. So I know people can go read about this artist, but tell us about your personal journey. What made you write this book that's now critically acclaimed? It's published in more than one language. So you have 10 minutes, Doctor.
So I just want to say something exactly like Sultan said. I mean, this topic, I could and I should talk about it for hours. And so my editor is going to be Sultan. Sultan is going to tell me what to say about Fahrelnissa, because otherwise it's never going to end. So what was the question? What's
First
my connection?
question.
Okay.
What made
So,
you write this book?
Aywa. So the short answer and the quick answer is that when I found out that there was going to be a Fahrelnissa Zeid retrospective at Tate Modern, I thought that this would be the most appropriate time for me to find a publisher who would take this book, or the idea of the book. There was no book, there was no research. And so that's the short answer. Is that short enough for you?
That's fine. Sure, we can continue. So the book was published in English as well as in Turkish.
We published it at Art Books Publishing in 2017. And then it came out the following year in Turkish. It was published by our friends Dirham Art, who are also the gallery of the estate in Istanbul. And I say hi to all the ladies in the gallery and to Hazar if he's watching. And so, but I thank my publisher Andrew really for believing in this book, because I told him, this is the book that I want to write about this lady who used to be my art teacher back, I don't want to say how many decades ago. He said, okay, show me, you know, a book. I said, I don't have anything. Show me an abstract, show me. I said, I have nothing. I'm still going to do the research. And he believed in it. He didn't know me from Adam. And it was a journey. So and I thank also AFAC, the Arab Fund for Arts and Culture, for funding me. So now we begin.
Doctora, you had some kind of personal association, but also I think members of your family also knew the artist. Is that correct?
Right. So now we begin with the long answer. After giving the short answer, now we begin with the long answer. So my family, my parents were living in Jordan in the late 70s and until the mid 80s. My mother, Aisha Lamsin, is a novelist and a writer. She happened to meet Fahrelnissa, Princess Fahrelnissa Zeid, and they became friends. But most important, so this picture was in 1979. May 1979, I think May 22nd. And Fahrelnissa was still working on that painting. It was not finished. This is in her studio. And I think this was the first time my mother met her. And anyway, so the point is, okay, they became friends. But most importantly, they had the project of writing a book that my mother, after she became friends with Fahrelnissa and she learned about her life, they had the project that my mother would write a book about her. It would be her life story. And my mother is a novelist, not an art writer or a critic, and she had published a very successful best-selling novel in 1976 in Paris. So anyway, for reasons having to do with the publishing world at that time, the book did not happen. But معلش, let's go back. خلصتش القصة. Thank you. But they stayed friends. And at that time, you know, like all adolescents, I had delusions that maybe I wanted to become an artist. So my mother asked Fahrelnissa if she could give me painting lessons, because she used to give real painting lessons to a group of wonderful and talented people. Among them, I'm happy to see our dear and beloved Femia here. And so Fahrelnissa agreed, but of course I could not come in the morning and take part in the real classes in the morning because I was at school. So I would come every Wednesday afternoon. I did that for about 2 years, except during the school holidays. So that is my personal connection, actual connection with Fahrelnissa.
This lady on the right of the photo is not you.
أكيد لا.
Okay, I was checking. Doctora, tell us about her personality. What was the personality of Fahrelnissa?
Very strong, very powerful, very mercurial, generous, expansive, just like her paintings. Kind, generous, determined, fiery. What you saw is what you got. There was nothing hidden. She was amazing.
Victoria, so you see this for everybody, just make sure you take a look at this work because the next image is actually quite similar. So we find ourselves transported decades ahead with the same image, and almost you're standing in the same position almost that your mother was standing at, so correct?
Thank you, Sultan. Thank you for doing this. It's really very moving to me, wallahi. I never noticed the similarity until yesterday when we were preparing. So yeah, and subhanallah, it's very moving. So yes, so this was in 2018 when my book came out in Turkish, translated, and there was the opening of an exhibition called Ode to Passion at Durham Art. So it was a very smart idea to have for an exhibition because they gathered works not for sale but from Turkish collectors for the first time, and that this work was shipped from Amman because it's in the estate. And so they said, hey, why don't you take a group picture because your book just came out with. We have here His Royal Highness Prince Ra' bin Zeid, the son of Fahrelnissa, and Princess Majida Raed, his wife, and who both were enormously helpful and enormously supportive when I did my research and welcoming me into their home and opening everything to me. So I thank them for their kindness and faith. Really, without them, this would not have happened.
Doctora, how long did it take you to write the book, and how was the access to the archive? So was the access available? Were the documents in Turkish? Were they in Arabic? What kind of challenges did you face with accessing the archive to write this important story?
Okay, actually, I should, because we're doing this on Zoom, very often I will ask myself when I was doing the research, nobody would be able to do the work that I'm doing 20 years from now, because Fahrelnissa was a child of the 19th century, of European high culture from the 19th century. So this means that she had certain tastes in music and so on, and in art and in literature, but in her personal habits, she kept a diary. And she wrote everything. And the amazing gift for me as a researcher at that time was that before writing a letter, she would write a draft on her diary. And so I found these drafts of these amazing letters. So the challenge was that because Fahrelnissa wrote everything and documented everything. I mean, people nowadays would write notes on a computer or take a selfie. No, she would sketch and write on the same notebook. Okay, so the notebook was the mirror of her life, and there are tens of notebooks. What helped me enormously is that I would say 90% of all this was written in French. And because French was not her native language, but it was the language of her education, and it was the language that she loved. So everything was written in French. For the later years, she started writing in English. The Turkish material was only the private correspondence with her family. But there was even correspondence with her family in French. So for me, it was very easy. Her handwriting, I was already used to it from before. So it was just a question of sifting through it. And to answer your question, I think it took me a year, I think, or less than a year between the research on site, and then the writing, and then the bibliographical and the historical and the analysis research. It took me about a year, which is crazy, but I dedicated myself to it, and I was lucky to have a grant from AFAC to allow me to do this.
We have journalist Melissa Gronland who says, "Bravo, Dr. Adila. It's no mean feat to maintain your persistence and with a beautiful result." Doctora, do you recommend that other people pursue a book project and document histories of art in the Middle East and in the Arab world?
This is a must. This is an absolute must. But it also helps if you have an artist who is an interesting person, who had an interesting life, and who was an interesting person. So it helps, because then if the artist is not interesting, you can just write a monograph. My book here was an artist biography, meaning I reconstructed her career completely. I reanalyzed her career and the artworks, but I also talked about her life, the reviews that she got. So it's a real artist biography. For that, you need to have the support of the families or the support of the artist. That's not an easy task.
Doctora, I just want to tell everybody, notice Doctora actually pointed this out to me. The right side of this painting is actually had to be turned. Is this correct? Because it was such a huge artwork that it wouldn't fit into one room. Doctora, thank you for pointing out that we had one of her students here. Would you allow me to ask ست أوفيميا to say a couple of words? Is that allowed? May I?
It's your show.
ست أوفيميا, thank you for joining us from Canada. You were one of Fahrelnissa Zeid's students in Amman. Could you maybe take a minute and tell us a little bit about your impressions? And I'd love to host you for a longer 1 hour talk, but maybe just a few seconds, under a minute, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sultan, for opening the microphone. And thank you, Adila, for such a wonderful presentation. I don't think anyone could ever do a better job than what Adila did. Thank you, Adila. Thank you, Sultan. Well, Fahrelnissa, to me, I was one of the very lucky few to be chosen by her. And I was one of her very first students from 1976. And what can I say about her? You know, there was this very famous lady, Katya Granov, who was the Dean of Art in Paris. Then she resumed Fahrelnissa in the best 4 words. C'est une messagère de millénaire empire. She's I mean, that's I think the best to put in few words. And what I learned from her, you know, she's not a school. It's not like a regular institute. It's a school in life. It's I mean, she was a giant at her time. And the most important lesson was, you must forget what you know. That's what she taught us at the very beginning, because what you know is what you have learned, but what you don't know is what you really are. And this is the cosmic forces that are within you. That's why you don't see nature with you have to see nature in your inner eyes to be able to create the mystery, to discover, to penetrate the mysteries of the universe. I think, and it would take days to talk about her.
Thank you so much, ست أوفيميا. ست Adila, tell us maybe about 1 or 2 of the works here. Which work would you like to talk about?
Well, obviously I can talk about all of them, but let's go back to the black and white one. That one is called Towards a Sky, and it reappeared miraculously also in 2017. Sotheby's found it and sold it, and it's in a very distinguished collection now. But this is actually when it was exhibited in 1956 at the Palais de Tokyo, the current Palais de Tokyo, where they had the periodical Salon des Réalités Nouvelles, where Fahrelnissa participated with all the big artists of the day. So here, this is 592 centimeters long, and so it's called Towards a Sky, Vers un ciel. And when she showed it at the ICA in '56, it could not fit, and they had to roll it. They had to roll it down and to like you know, make it a little bit slighter. And then when she showed it at the Lord's Gallery later again, it couldn't fit in the gallery. They had to just put it outside. This is not an exceptional work. This was a regular output by Fahrelnissa. And if you want, we can talk about this kind of work later.
So We can continue. You can continue speaking, and I'm just scrolling through the images.
I mean, I don't know if I should talk about the paintings or if I should talk about Fahrelnissa as an artist. I mean, all these paintings are, you know, are mentioned in my book and analyzed very well. But I would like to talk more about her as an artist. But this is a wonderful painting that surfaced, I think, last year, and I was so happy it came, and I wrote about it in my Instagram, and I thought this work illustrates a key period in Fahrelnissa's life and career right before the break that she suffered in 1958. And I can't believe it's out, and if anybody can buy it, grab it. And lo and behold, I found out a year later that our friend here has bought it and was lucky enough to buy it, and it can be seen by everybody, I think, بالإمارات.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I was telling Dr. Adila when we were doing this presentation that I feel terrible about adding a work from the collection, because this is not a Barjil Majlis. This is a Majlis for everybody. But it was just a funny coincidence that Dr. Adila had posted about this work a month before we bought it without my knowing. I had no idea, I promise. And then I was so happy to see it on your account. And I think this is obviously a time just to thank all these auction houses that have been doing a great job in the past decade and a half, documenting a lot of the artworks, bringing them back, making them available in high resolution images, text. So all these things I think are important to acknowledge, not only auction houses, but a lot of galleries and scholars like yourself, Dr. Adila. If it wasn't for them, then many of these works would be lost. I actually have an image here. Doctora, what is the strange thing that we are seeing in front of us? I see bones. How is this an artwork? What's going on here?
This is a great artwork by Fahrelnissa, which is in the Huma Kabakji collection now, which is an excellent collection in Turkey, private collection. So, I mean, this is a long story where to start, because we haven't spoken yet about Fahrelnissa as an artist. This is one period in her life where she was experimenting with poultry, chicken, rabbit bones, and she did a lot of things with them, which ended up in some point. But here, this is a transitional period. First, she started with the bones, she colored them, then she put them, and this is what we see here. She put them on a canvas, and then she transitioned out of that by encasing them in polyester resin, by inventing basically a new art form, a new art medium that she called paleocrystallos, and I think that's the next picture. So sometimes she would, this one doesn't have a name, that one doesn't have a name, but I have some in my book that are where the bones are assembled differently, which are called adorers of the sun and so on. You know, it's important to understand that there was a lot of trauma, turmoil, and I would say heaviness in Fahrelnissa's life. And like I write in the preface of my book, what saved her, okay, it is the art, but also she had this sense of playfulness that I call whimsy, that she could see interesting things in the smallest things, that she had this childlike gaze with her impeccable intellect and her modernist temperament, which made her do, you know, the bones thing. And this is the culmination of that bones-based artwork, which she called paleocrystallos. And here we see that she basically, I mean, I described the whole technical thing. It's a slab of polyester, but here we see old slabs are broken. The blue ones, she put them inside the yellow ones with, of course, the bones, the animal bones. But what she did in her house in Paris before she moved, because you know, as I write in my preface, she was a painter of motion and light, okay? So she had these filters that, light projectors that would move on a motor, rotate, and would project the light behind the paleocrystallos. I mean, for anybody seeing it now, you can say it's fine, it's a work of art, it's amazing as it is. But no, even that was not enough for Fahrelnissa. She would put the light projector behind it, and so you would have the light projecting from behind the paleocrystallos, projecting on the wall, I mean, you can just imagine the effect. But this is the projection of the interior world of Fahrelnissa that she projected onto her artwork externally.
I think this is the penultimate image here that we have. This is an image from 1968, and so this was actually an interesting year that you told me about. She was about to have a major exhibition in the 60s, and then obviously the events in Paris, 1968, had taken place. What are the unwritten histories of Fahrelnissa Zeid?
The thing that happened when you analyze the history of the period, that she was I'll just talk about Paris. When she was in Paris, she was part of a loose group called the Nouvelle École de Paris. Actually, she was part of their first exhibition in 1952 in the Galerie Babylone in La Rue Babylone. So by the early 60s, the world had moved on. You had something called Les Nouveaux Réalistes and so on. And her colleagues were starting to get retrospectives in the Musée d'Art Moderne in Paris. They were beginning to represent France at the Venice Biennale. Fahrelnissa had no country to represent at the Venice Biennale and no country to give her a major, museum. She was a refugee, basically. She was a refugee living in exile, in obscurity in the 60s. And what happened is that she met André Malraux. André Malraux had heard of her. He asked her to... Okay, André Malraux was a companion of Charles de Gaulle. He was the first minister of culture of France, and basically André Malraux is the blueprint for all subsequent personas, let's say, of culture ministers around the world. So he knew who she was. He asked her to come and visit him in his office in Rue de Valois, and she took with him those bones that she had painted. And because she wanted to show him something new, she's not going to bring, her Apple computer to show her works. So she said, this is nothing, ce sont des joujoux, these are just little toys. He said, yes, maybe there are toys, mais c'est de l'art, this is art. And they agreed to have an exhibition. And for the following years, I found this amazing thing in the documents. She was in correspondence for years with the legendary Jacques Jaujard. For people who know the French history, Jacques Jaujard was the keeper of the Louvre Museum during the Nazi occupation, okay? And then he ended up working in the French Ministry of Culture in charge of exhibitions. So he was visiting with Fahrelnissa and exchanging, and she was sending him detailed lists of paintings and measurements to exhibit in that exhibition. And May 68 happened, and Jaujard was let go by André Malraux, and then André Malraux was let go, or the whole government changed, and so that major retrospective exhibition did not happen. But it's okay, because what we got from that is all the paleocrystallos that Fahrelnissa produced, because she thought she was going to show in that exhibition, including the new portraiture, the exceptional portraiture that she produced in the 60s, which was a continuation of her abstract work. I mean, if you remove the eyes and you look at the skin.
Doctora, I have 4 questions for 4 minutes. So every question must be within 1 minute. So the first question I will ask is actually from Georgetown University student Alia Kawar, who says, how appreciated and recognized was Fahrelnissa Zeid when she was living in Jordan as an abstract artist?
Oh, she was. I mean, everybody who knew who Fahrelnissa was. She had the big exhibition in 1981. That exhibition where Euphemia exhibited, and even I had 2 works, exhibited there. It was a giant, monster exhibition. There was no gallery that held it. It was held in the Cultural Palace, and it helped normalize abstract art in Jordan, because at that time there were still the issues of, the dichotomies of Turath, wal Hadathe, and engaged art and committed art, and then she came with this blast, of abstract art.
3 minutes, 3 questions. Does Fahrelnissa deserve her own museum?
For sure. For sure, she deserves her own museum. Look, Fahrelnissa was a force of modernism. She's the most important modern artist that you probably never heard of. She was part of the Turkish avant-garde in the late 40s. She was of the European Parisian avant-garde in the 50s in Paris. She was the first woman of any country to exhibit at the ICA. The ICA was, if you will, the Tate of its time. She managed to reinvent herself by, changing her work every 10 years, inventing this new art form of paleocrystallos, then reinventing herself as a teacher. But, people can console themselves by going to the Istanbul Modern. The Istanbul Modern now it's in renovation, but hopefully when they reopen, they have some amazing works. And inshallah, in the future, there will be more well-curated exhibitions about her work.
Doctora, last two questions. Apparently, you found some new documents, or someone came across new documents of Fahrelnissa?
Yes, I'm very thankful for the family who were very kind to find a treasure trove of documents. And I went and I looked at them. I have not been able to research them yet because of what we talked about in the first half takes all my time. But this was actually a very interesting cache of documents because it touches upon what I try to do in my book, which is to resituate Fahrelnissa in the art world of Europe and of the US at that period. So it was correspondence with gallerists and with artists and so on. So inshallah, I will have time to sift through them and then to produce a new paper. Thank you, Sultan, for bringing this up.
Doctora, my final question is: where can we buy your book?
You can buy my book on Amazon, of course, both Amazon UK and Amazon.com, and you can also buy it directly from my publisher, Art Publishing.
Doctora, before I end the chat, I was scrolling through the 150.
Sorry. The publisher is called Art Books, but the website is Art Publishing. Yes.
Right. Before I end the talk, I was scrolling over some of the guests, and one of the guests is wearing a Palestinian Museum T-shirt. Let me try and find him here so I can spotlight him. Where are you? Hold on a second. Okay. Oh, there you go. There he is. I'll spotlight him for a second. Rami, can you show us your T-shirt? Can you lift your T-shirt? There you go. متحف الفلسطيني. There you
Hi,
go.
Rami. Good to see you.
طيب, thank you so much, Doctora. I really appreciate this time that you've given us. Thank you so much. As I said, it's impossible, nearly impossible, to fit within 1 hour all the knowledge that Dr. Adila has. The great news is that there's so many more resources. If you care about either of the subjects, Dr. Adila has published a book on each one of them. So, and also there's videos, she's on Monte Carlo, she's on YouTube, she's on all manners of intellectual output she has produced. So please make sure that you buy the book, and all Palestinians and non-Palestinians, all Arabs, all Middle Easterners, document your past, take a lesson, learn a lesson from Dr. Adila. Thank you all for joining us, and have a nice day.
Thank you. And follow the Palestinian Museum. Thank you, Sultan.
Mashkoura. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us.